The transport hub had become a war zone. Zephyrian guards had established defensive positions around the main lifts leading to the surface, while freed prisoners were taking cover behind overturned furniture and disabled equipment. Energy blasts filled the air with deadly light, and the acrid smell of burned metal and ozone hung heavy in the atmosphere. Marcus assessed the situation quickly. 17 freed prisoners faced approximately 30 guards, but the guards held the high ground and controlled access to the surface. Worse reinforcements would be arriving soon from other facilities on Tartarus Prime. "Dr. Martinez," he called over the sound of weapons fire. "What kind of explosives do you have?" "Improvised plasma charges made from power cell components," she replied, checking her equipment pack. 3 of them moderate yield. Enough to breach a wall or door, but not enough to bring down the whole structure. Commander Thax crawled over to their position, his forearms moving with military precision as he coordinated his equipment. "Guards have established a killing field around the main lifts." "Alternative routes?" "Maintenance shafts," said Xerix, his shadowy form barely visible even this close. "I have scouted 3 possible paths. All lead to service areas near the surface." Valthara, still weakened but recovering, extended her massive neck to survey the battlefield. "The guards are using standard suppression tactics. They expect us to attempt a frontal assault on their positions. Which means we do the opposite," Marcus concluded. "Xerix, can you get a small team through those maintenance shafts without being detected?" "Easily. But the shafts are too small for our large friend here." He gestured toward Valthara. The dragon's eyes glittered with something that might have been amusement. "Perhaps it is time for a more direct approach." Before anyone could ask what she meant, Valthara rose to her full height and strode directly into the open. Energy blasts immediately converged on her position, but her scales deflected most of the shots harmlessly. Those that did penetrate caused only minor wounds. "Zephyrian cowards," she roared, her voice echoing through the chamber like thunder. "You cage me for 3 centuries and then hide behind cover like frightened children. Face me as warriors if you have any honor left." The psychological effect was immediate and devastating. Half the guards ceased firing, simply staring in terror at the massive dragon bearing down on their positions. The other half concentrated their fire on Valthara, which was exactly what Marcus had hoped for. "Move," he whispered to his team. While Valthara drew the guards' attention, Marcus led Dr. Martinez and 3 other prisoners in a flanking maneuver around the main battle area. They moved quickly and quietly, using smoke from damaged equipment to mask their movements. The first guard position fell within seconds. Marcus's bone blade found its target while Dr. Martinez used a captured energy pistol to eliminate the second guard. They seized the guard's weapons and communications equipment, then moved to the next position. Meanwhile, Xerix and Commander Thax led separate teams through the maintenance shafts as planned. The Voidwalker's natural stealth abilities allowed his team to emerge behind enemy lines undetected, while Thax's team provided covering fire from above. The battle turned quickly. Caught between multiple attack vectors and psychologically shaken by Valthara's rampage, the Zephyrian guards broke and ran. Several prisoners were wounded but none killed, while at least 15 guards lay dead or incapacitated. "Lift access secured," Commander Thax reported as his team took control of the main elevator controls. "Surface transport?" Marcus asked, checking the time. They had been fighting for 20 minutes, and reinforcements were definitely on the way. "Captain Dracus's ship is still docked at landing platform 7, Dr. Martinez said, consulting the stolen tactical data, "but there may be additional security." Valthara approached, her scales showing several burns from energy weapons but her spirit clearly undaunted. "I am sufficiently recovered to provide additional persuasion if necessary." They used the main lift in groups with the most combat-capable prisoners going first to secure the surface level. Marcus remained with the last group, ensuring no one was left behind. As they ascended, he felt a familiar mixture of anticipation and dread. They were close to freedom, but the most dangerous part still lay ahead. The surface level was eerily quiet. Emergency lighting cast everything in red shadows, and the constant wind from the moon's perpetual storms howled through broken windows. The landing platform was visible through a large viewport, and Dracus's transport ship sat exactly where they had left it. "Too easy," Dr. Martinez muttered, echoing Marcus's own thoughts. "Agreed," said Xerix, his form already beginning to blur as he activated natural camouflage abilities. Scanning for hidden positions. It took him less than a minute to spot the trap. 20 additional guards had been positioned around the landing platform, with heavy weapons trained on the ship. Getting to the transport would require crossing 200 meters of open ground under direct fire. Suggestions? Marcus asked the group. Frontal assault, Commander Thax said immediately. Overwhelming force, accept casualties, secure the objective. Stealth infiltration, Xyrix countered. Eliminate sentries silently, then signal for group advance. Distraction and misdirection, Dr. Martinez added. Create multiple false targets, confuse their targeting systems. Valthera listened to all the suggestions, then looked directly at Marcus. What does your experience tell you? Marcus studied the tactical situation, weighing options and risks. Outside, he could see the lights of approaching aircraft in the distance. Reinforcements were maybe 10 minutes away. We use all three approaches, he decided. Xyrix takes a small stealth team to eliminate the heaviest weapons. Commander Thax leads a frontal assault to fix their attention. Dr. Martinez and I create diversions using her remaining explosives. And Valthara? Dr. Martinez asked. The dragon's lips pulled back in her characteristic terrifying smile. I will do what I do best. Cause terror and destruction. They moved out according to plan. Xyrix and 2 other prisoners with stealth capabilities disappeared into the shadows around the landing platform. Commander Thax positioned his assault team at the main entrance, waiting for the signal to attack. Marcus and Dr. Martinez made their way to a maintenance area that overlooked the platform. From there, they could see the guards' positions clearly. Most were focused on the ship, but several were watching the main entrance. First charge goes there, Dr. Martinez said, indicating a guard position with heavy energy cannons. Second one there by the communications array. Third one I'm saving for emergency use. Timer or remote detonation? Remote. I rigged them with parts from a communication device. Marcus activated his captured communication unit and called Xyrix. Voidwalker, status? In position. Have clear shots on 4 targets, including heavy weapons operators. Commander Thax, ready to advance on your signal. Valthera? The dragon's voice came from directly behind them, though Marcus hadn't heard her approach. Prepared to provide covering fire. Marcus looked out at the landing platform one more time. 20 guards, heavy weapons, open ground, and reinforcements incoming. It should have been impossible odds. But then again, 24 hours ago he had been facing execution. Now he was leading a prison break with a 300-year-old dragon as his partner. All teams, he said into the communication unit. Execute in 5 seconds. 3, 2, 1, go. Captain Dracus proved remarkably cooperative once he realized his situation. Within minutes, Marcus had the access codes to the transport ship, the facility's prisoner database, and a complete layout of the Zephyrian military installations in this sector. The other prisoners? Marcus said, studying the data on Dracus's personal tablet. We're taking them with us. That is inadvisable. The captain wheezed, his throat still sore from Marcus's grip. Many of them are extremely dangerous. War criminals, terrorists, political dissidents who have committed violent acts. Valthara's rumbling laugh filled the small room, from a Zephyrian perspective perhaps. But then, you consider anyone who opposes your expansion to be a terrorist. Marcus scrolled through the prisoner files, making mental notes. Dr. Sarah Martinez, the human terraforming specialist, Commander Thax of the Hegemony Defense Force, a 4-armed warrior species that had fought the Zephyrians to a standstill before being betrayed by their own government, a being called Xyrix the Voidwalker, whose species Marcus didn't recognize but whose crimes seemed to involve liberating slave colonies. Sounds like my kind of people, Marcus muttered. How do we free them all at once? Master Control Override, Dracus said reluctantly, located in the main security center. But it requires 2 senior officer authorizations and you're a senior officer, Marcus interrupted. What about the second authorization? Warden Kelrick, he is on level 65. Valthara and Marcus exchanged glances. They had been planning to escape with just themselves and perhaps Dr. Martinez. Freeing all the prisoners would be far more complicated and dangerous. How many guards in the facility? Marcus asked. 53 plus 12 administrative personnel. And how many prisoners? 17 plus yourselves. Marcus did quick math. Even if only half the prisoners were combat capable, they would outnumber the guards. And most of the guards would be focused on the power failure and general confusion. not expecting a full prison break. Velthara, how long before your strength returns? The dragon considered carefully. Perhaps 30 minutes for basic mobility. 2 hours for full combat capability. We don't have 2 hours. Marcus made his decision. We're going to have to be creative. He turned back to Dracus. Your guards communicate through what frequency? Standard tactical band 779. But without the proper encryption, I don't need to send messages. I just need to listen. Marcus found the captain's communication earpiece and clipped it to his own ear. Immediately, panicked voices filled his head, all speaking in rapid Zephyrian. Velthara translated in real time. They have discovered the dead guards in the control room. Search teams are being organized. The warden has been alerted. They are implementing lockdown protocols. How long before lockdown is complete? 10 minutes, Dracus said. Once initiated, no one can enter or leave the facility without authorization from the Zephyrian High Command. Then we move now. Marcus hauled the captain to his feet. You're going to help us reach the security center. And Captain, if you try anything clever, remember that my partner here hasn't eaten in several days. Velthara's stomach chose that moment to rumble loudly, a sound like distant thunder. Dracus went pale, which was impressive for a reptilian. They used the transport system to move through the facility, avoiding the main corridors where search teams were operating. Marcus's military training served him well, allowing him to predict guard movements and find routes that kept them ahead of the search. The security center was heavily fortified, but the guards inside were more focused on their monitors than on protecting the entrance. Marcus eliminated 2 sentries silently while Velthara provided distraction by making noise in a different corridor. Inside the security center, they found Warden Kelrick frantically coordinating the search efforts. He was a large Zephyrian, heavily scarred and bearing the marks of a career military officer. When he saw them enter, his hand immediately went to his sidearm. I wouldn't, Marcus advised, pressing his bone blade against Dracus's throat. Your captain here has been very helpful. I'd hate for his cooperation to become unnecessary. Kelrick's eyes fixed on Velthara, who had squeezed partway through the entrance. Impossible. The containment field was designed by engineers who thought they were smarter than they actually were. Velthara finished. Warden Kelrick, I believe. I have been looking forward to this meeting for quite some time. The warden's hand moved away from his weapon. Like Dracus, he was intelligent enough to recognize a hopeless situation when he saw one. What do you want? Master control override, Marcus said simply. Release all prisoners now. I cannot do that. Many of those beings are extremely dangerous. More dangerous than her? Marcus gestured toward Velthara, who helpfully bared her massive teeth. I doubt it. Working together, the 2 Zephyrian officers activated the master control system. Throughout the facility, cell doors began opening with soft chimes. On the security monitors, Marcus could see prisoners emerging cautiously from their confinement, most looking confused but alert. Attention all prisoners, Marcus said into the facility's communication system. This is Marcus Chen, formerly of the Terran Colonial Marines. The Dragon and I are initiating a prison break. Anyone who wants off this rock, head for the main transport hub. Level 47. We leave in 20 minutes. Chaos erupted on the monitors as guards suddenly found themselves facing freed prisoners throughout the facility. Some fights broke out immediately, while other prisoners simply vanished into maintenance corridors and emergency passages. Dr. Martinez first, Marcus said, watching the monitors. Where is she? Level 32, cell block 7, Kelrick said reluctantly. They used the transport one more time, arriving in a corridor filled with the sounds of combat. Dr. Martinez was indeed free, and she had put her explosive device to good use. 3 guards lay unconscious near her cell, and she was systematically stripping them of weapons and equipment. She looked up as they materialized, taking in the sight of a human, a massive dragon, and 2 Zephyrian officers with remarkable composure. I'm guessing you're responsible for the power failure and general chaos? She asked Marcus. Guilty as charged. Dr. Sarah Martinez, I presume. That's right. And you're either my rescue party or my execution squad. Rescue party. We have a ship waiting, but we need to move fast. Dr. Martinez shouldered a captured energy rifle and checked her improvised equipment pack. Lead the way. As they headed toward the transport hub, other freed prisoners began converging on their location. Commander Thax arrived first. a towering four-armed warrior whose species Marcus recognized from intelligence briefings. The hegemony fighters were legendary for their combat skills. Human, Thax rumbled in accented Galactic standard. You freed us. Why? Because the enemy of my enemy is my friend, Marcus replied, and we all seem to have the same enemy. Xerix the Voidwalker appeared next, moving like liquid shadow despite his substantial size. His species was humanoid but clearly adapted for stealth operations. Others followed, representing a dozen different species but united by their hatred of Zephyrian oppression. Impressive, Valthora murmured to Marcus. You have assembled quite an alliance in a very short time. The hard part comes next, Marcus replied, watching the security monitors. Getting out of here alive. The countdown began exactly as Valthora had predicted. Her ability to track the heartbeats and movements of every being in the facility was proving unnervingly accurate. Marcus crouched beside the dragon's massive form, watching electrical energy build between her scales like a living storm. Guard rotation begins in 30 seconds, she whispered, her voice barely audible even in the confined space. The EMP will trigger the moment the first guard leaves his post. Marcus checked his makeshift weapons one final time. During their planning session, Valthera had used her claws to shape several bones into crude but effective tools. A sharpened femur that could serve as a blade, smaller bones filed into lockpicks, and a skull fragment curved into a knuckle guard. They weren't much against energy weapons, but they were better than nothing. Remember, Valthera continued, the emergency stairs are behind the third corridor junction. The control room is level 47. Captain Dracus will be in quarters on level 50. You have 14 minutes from the moment the EMP hits. And if I don't make it back in time? The dragon's eyes met his. Then I die here and you spend the rest of your very short life running from the Zephyrian fleet. Encouraging. Marcus positioned himself near the transport circle. What about the other prisoners? Are there others in this facility? 17 beings on various levels, mostly political prisoners and war criminals from species that oppose Zephyrian expansion. If we can reach the master control panel, we can free them as well. More allies. Or more complications. Not all species imprisoned here are friendly to humans. A soft chime echoed through the chamber, so faint Marcus almost missed it. Valthora's massive head lifted slightly. Guard change initiated, she murmured. 5 seconds. The electrical energy around her scales intensified, creating a web of lightning that made the air itself seem to vibrate. Marcus felt his hair standing on end as the charge built to critical levels. Now, Valthora roared, and the sound wasn't just noise. It was a weapon. The electromagnetic pulse that erupted from her body was invisible but devastating. Every piece of electronic equipment in the facility died simultaneously. Emergency lighting flickered and went dark. The constant hum of ventilation systems ceased. Even the energy field containing them simply vanished. In the sudden darkness, Marcus was already moving. He sprinted toward where the transport circle had been, feeling his way by memory and instinct. His hand found the wall, and he began climbing the maintenance ladder he had spotted earlier. The emergency stairs were exactly where Valthera had said they would be. Marcus took them 3 at a time, his enhanced conditioning serving him well. Behind him he could hear confused shouts in the Zephyrian language as guards tried to understand what had happened. Level 47 arrived faster than expected. The control room door was sealed, but without power, the electronic locks were useless. Marcus used one of the bone picks to work the mechanical backup, a skill learned during his less legal years. Inside, emergency chemical lighting was beginning to activate, casting everything in an eerie red glow. 2 guards were frantically trying to restart their equipment, their reptilian voices high with panic. Marcus moved like a shadow. The first guard never saw him coming. The bone blade slid between vertebrae with surgical precision, and the Zephyrian collapsed without a sound. The second guard turned just in time to see death approaching. Human, how did you... The skull-knuckle guard crushed his throat before he could finish the question. Marcus caught the falling body and lowered it quietly to the floor. 2 minutes down, 12 to go. The control panel was more complex than he had hoped, but Valthora's briefing had been thorough. He found the transport controls and began the sequence to reverse his arrival. The emergency power would take several more minutes to fully activate, but the transport system had its own backup cells. As he worked, Marcus noticed something interesting on one of the monitoring screens that was still functional. Video feeds from other cells throughout the facility showed a variety of alien prisoners, most of them looking confused by the sudden power failure, but one feed made him pause. A human woman, probably in her 30s, was calmly working on what appeared to be a small explosive device made from components scavenged from her cell. Even in the grainy video, Marcus could see the focused intelligence in her movements. "Well, I'll be damned," he murmured, then continued his work on the controls. The transport system came online just as emergency power began returning to other sections of the facility. Marcus activated the sequence and felt the familiar tingle of molecular transport beginning. He materialized back in the dragon's chamber just as the main lights flickered back to life. Valthera was exactly where he had left her, but her magnificent scales had dulled noticeably. The EMP had drained her more than she had let on. "Status?" she asked, her voice weaker but determined. "Control room secured. Transport active. Captain next." Marcus helped support some of her weight as she struggled to stand. "There's another human prisoner here. Female, looks like she knows her way around explosives. Dr. Sarah Martinez, terraforming specialist, imprisoned for refusing to surrender colonial survey data. You know her?" "I know all the prisoners." "I suggest we collect her and the others after we deal with Captain Dracus. Her skills could prove valuable." They moved to the transport circle together. Valthera's condition was worse than she was admitting, but Marcus could see the fierce determination in her eyes. 300 years of imprisonment had not broken her spirit. "Level 50, Marcus said as they stepped into the transport field. They materialized in a corridor lined with officer quarters. The emergency lighting was fully restored here, and Marcus could hear the sound of running feet and shouted orders from other parts of the facility. "Third door on the left," Valthera whispered, leaning heavily against the wall. Marcus approached the door carefully. It was reinforced, but like everything else in the facility, it relied primarily on electronic security. The mechanical backup lock was more sophisticated than the control room, but not impossible. Inside, Captain Dracus was speaking rapidly into a communication device. He looked up as Marcus entered, his reptilian features twisting with surprise and fear. "Impossible. The Krythak should have—" Marcus's hand clamped over the captain's throat, cutting off his words. "The Krythak and I had a nice chat. Turns out we have a lot in common." Dracus's eyes widened as Valthera squeezed through the doorway, her massive form filling the small room. Even weakened, she was a terrifying sight. "Captain," she said pleasantly, "we require your assistance with a small matter. Your ship's biometric locks, to be specific." "I will never—" Marcus increased the pressure on his throat. "Captain, let me explain your situation. You can help us willingly, in which case you might live long enough to see a prison cell. Or you can refuse, and I'll let my friend here show you exactly how she's been entertaining herself for the past 3 centuries. Valthera's lips pulled back in what might charitably be called a smile. "I do so enjoy meeting new people." The captain's resistance crumbled immediately. What do you want?" Marcus stood perfectly still as the massive dragon circled him, its claws clicking against the stone floor with each step. Most beings would have been paralyzed with terror, but Marcus had faced death too many times to let fear cloud his judgment now. "I destroyed a Zephyrian military installation," Marcus replied calmly. "Killed about 200 of their soldiers in the process." The Krythak's massive head tilted, studying him with those burning eyes. "Impressive for such a small creature. I am Valthera, last of the Starfire dragons of Zarian Prime. I have been imprisoned here since your species was still learning to leave their home world." Marcus Chen, late of the Terran Colonial Marines. He gestured around the chamber. "Nice place you've got here." A sound that might have been laughter rumbled from the dragon's throat. Sarcasm. I had forgotten how amusing that could be. The last few prisoners simply screamed until I ended their suffering. Marcus noticed something the others had probably missed in their terror. Scratches on the walls weren't random. They formed patterns almost like writing. The bones on the floor were arranged in specific configurations. This creature hadn't just been surviving for 3 centuries. It had been planning. "You're not going to eat me right away," Marcus observed. Perceptive. "No, I am not." "Do you know why?" "Because you're as bored as you are hungry. And I'm the first person you've been able to have a conversation with in probably decades." Valthera settled onto her haunches, bringing her massive head closer to Marcus's level. The Zephyrians believe they are studying me. In truth, I have been studying them. Every prisoner they send carries information. Their equipment, their technology, their weaknesses. You, however, are different. How so? You destroyed one of their installations. Successfully. That requires not just strength, but knowledge of their systems. Intelligence gathering. Strategic thinking. The dragon's eyes narrowed. Skills I could use. Marcus felt a spark of hope, quickly suppressed. Hope was dangerous in a place like this. What are you suggesting? Partnership. Valthera rose to her full height again, towering over him. I have been imprisoned here for 300 years, Marcus Chen. I have learned patience, but my patience is not infinite. I want freedom. I want revenge. And I want my people's killers to burn. The Zephyrians killed your people? Not just killed. Exterminated. My entire species wiped out to prevent us from interfering with their expansion. They kept me alive because they wished to study dragon physiology, to understand how we generate and control plasma fire. Valthera's voice grew colder with each word. They learned much from torturing my captured kin before they died. Marcus felt something stir in his chest. Rage but controlled. Focused. He had felt it before when he learned about the Zephyrian massacres on the outer colonies. Entire human settlements burned to ash to make room for reptilian expansion. What do you need from me? Access to their computer systems. The transport that brought you here is still docked above. If we can reach it, I can access their data networks. 3 centuries of accumulated intelligence will finally have an outlet. Marcus looked around the chamber. In case you hadn't noticed, we're trapped in an underground cell with no way out. Valthera's lips pulled back, revealing teeth like crystalline daggers. Are we? Tell me, human, what do you know about Zephyrian engineering? Marcus thought back to his conversation with the captain. Their attention to detail is inconsistent. They built this place in 7 years, which is incredibly fast for a project this size. Indeed. Speed over substance. They installed quantum phase restraints to contain my physical form, but they never considered that a being capable of generating plasma fire might also be capable of generating other forms of energy. The dragon extended one massive claw, and Marcus watched in fascination as electricity began to arc between her talons. Not the wild, chaotic lightning of a storm, but controlled, directed current. Electromagnetic pulse, Marcus breathed. You can generate an EMP. I can. But doing so will temporarily drain my strength, leaving me vulnerable. More importantly, it will only last for approximately 15 minutes before their backup systems restore power. We would need to move quickly. Marcus was already thinking tactically, his mind racing through possibilities. The energy field that brought me down here. If you disable it during the EMP, can it be reversed? Yes, but only from their control room 3 levels up. Someone would need to reach it and activate the transport sequence manually. Well, you're weakened from generating the pulse. Precisely. Valthera lowered her head until she was eye level with Marcus. It would require trust. I would be placing my life in the hands of a creature I have known for mere minutes. Marcus met her gaze steadily. And I'd be trusting that a dragon who's been locked up for 3 centuries won't decide to eat me the moment we're both free. Indeed. They stared at each other for a long moment. Finally, Marcus extended his hand. Partners. Valthera carefully extended one claw, gently touching his palm with the tip. Despite her size, her control was perfect. She could have sliced him in half without effort, but the contact was gentle as a handshake. Partners, she agreed. Now let me tell you about Zephyrian security protocols. For the next hour, Valthera shared everything she had learned about their captors. Guard rotations, security weaknesses, the layout of the tower, emergency procedures. The dragon's memory was perfect, and her observations were those of a brilliant tactical mind that had been studying her enemy for centuries. The control room will have 2 guards maximum, she explained. They rotate every 4 hours. The next rotation is in approximately 2 hours, during which there will be a brief window where only 1 guard is present. How can you be so precise about the timing? I can hear their heartbeats. All of them. Throughout the entire facility. After 3 centuries, you learn to recognize patterns. Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. The Zephyrians thought they were studying a dangerous animal. They had no idea they were keeping a prisoner who was far more intelligent than they were. There's something else, Valthera continued. Your transport ship is automated, but it requires biometric authorization to launch. Specifically, the authorization of the ranking officer who delivered you. The captain. Yes, he is currently in his quarters, 3 levels above the control room. We will need him alive, at least long enough to access his ship. Marcus nodded grimly. I can handle that part. But Valthara, once we're out of here, what then? The Zephyrian fleet will hunt us across the galaxy. The dragon's eyes blazed brighter. Let them come. I have been trapped here while my people's killers spread their poison across the stars. It is time they learned what it means to be hunted. Marcus Chen had been many things in his 34 years of life. A soldier, a smuggler, a rebel, and now apparently a science experiment. The Zephyrian tribunal had made their verdict clear. Death was too merciful for the human who had destroyed their military outpost. Instead, they would feed him to the Krythak. The transport ship's hull groaned as it descended through the atmosphere of Tartarus Prime, a moon that served as the galaxy's most feared prison. Marcus pressed his face against the small porthole, watching the barren landscape rush past. Red sand stretched endlessly in all directions, broken only by massive black towers that jutted from the ground like broken teeth. Fascinating specimen, chittered the insectoid guard, its compound eyes reflecting the dim cabin light. Most species beg for mercy at this point. Humans are peculiar. Marcus turned away from the window, his chains clinking softly. We're full of surprises. The Zephyrian captain, a tall reptilian being with silver scales, approached with something resembling amusement in his cold eyes. Indeed, that is precisely why the council decided on this particular punishment. Your species has caused considerable disruption to our expansion plans. Perhaps studying how the Krythak kills you will provide insights into human weaknesses. The ship shuddered as landing thrusters engaged. Through the porthole, Marcus could see one of the black towers growing larger. It was massive, easily a kilometer wide at its base and stretching so high that its peak disappeared into the perpetual storm clouds that shrouded the moon. The Krythak has been imprisoned here for 300 cycles. The captain continued, clearly enjoying himself. It has consumed 47 beings from 23 different species. Each death has been recorded and analyzed. Your death will be no different. Marcus said nothing. He had learned long ago that words were often wasted on those who had already decided your fate. Instead, he studied his captors, noting their movements, their weapons, their weaknesses. Even facing certain death, his mind worked tactically. It was what had kept him alive through 2 wars and countless skirmishes. The ship touched down with a metallic clang. Within minutes, Marcus found himself being escorted across the windswept landing platform toward the tower's entrance. The structure was even more imposing up close, its black walls smooth as glass and covered in strange glowing symbols that seemed to pulse with their own inner light. The entrance was a perfect circle, large enough for a small ship to pass through. As they approached, the symbols around it flared brighter, and an energy barrier shimmered into existence. Biometric scan complete, announced a mechanical voice. Prisoner transport authorized. The barrier dissolved, revealing a corridor that curved downward into darkness. The escort party proceeded in formation, with Marcus at the center. Emergency lighting strips provided minimal illumination, casting dancing shadows on the walls. The tower extends 3 kilometers into the moon's crust, explained the captain as they walked. The Krythak is held in the deepest chamber. There is no escape once you are sealed inside. The creature's roar alone has been known to drive lesser beings insane. As if summoned by the captain's words, a sound echoed up from the depths. It was low and rumbling like distant thunder. But there was something organic about it that made Marcus's teeth ache. Several of the guards visibly flinched. They descended for what felt like hours, passing through multiple security checkpoints and airlocks. The temperature grew noticeably warmer as they went deeper, and the air became thick with an alien musk that burned Marcus's nostrils. Finally, they reached the bottom. The final chamber was enormous, easily the size of a sports stadium. The ceiling disappeared into shadows above, and the walls were covered in deep gouges that spoke of desperate attempts to escape. In the center of the floor was a perfect circle of metal, surrounded by energy projectors that hummed with barely contained power. "The containment field," said the captain, gesturing toward the circle. "Step inside and it will transport you to the Krythak's domain. From there—" He made a gesture that needed no translation. Marcus stepped forward, then paused. "Tell me something, Captain. If this thing is so dangerous, so unstoppable, why haven't you just killed it?" The reptilian's eyes narrowed. The Krithak is the last of its kind. Its biology holds secrets that our scientists believe could be useful. We prefer to study it while it lives. And feeding it prisoners keeps it alive. Indeed. Marcus nodded slowly, then stepped into the circle. One more question. How long did it take to build this place? 7 cycles. Why do you ask? Marcus smiled for the first time since his capture. Just curious about the quality of Zephyrian engineering. Before the captain could respond, the energy field activated. The world dissolved into streams of light, and Marcus felt the familiar sensation of molecular transport. When reality reassembled around him, he was standing in a different chamber entirely. This one was smaller but infinitely more menacing. The walls were rough stone carved directly from the moon's bedrock. Bones littered the floor, some recognizable as humanoid, others belonging to creatures Marcus couldn't identify. The air was thick with the smell of death and something else, something alive and predatory. A low growl echoed from the shadows at the far end of the chamber. 2 eyes, each the size of dinner plates, opened in the darkness. They glowed with an inner fire that cast eerie shadows on the stone walls. The Krithak emerged slowly, deliberately. It was magnificent and terrifying in equal measure, easily 6 meters tall at the shoulder. Its body was covered in overlapping scales that shifted from deep purple to black, depending on the angle of the light. 4 powerful legs ended in claws that could have cut through steel, and its head was all teeth and fury. But it was the intelligence in those burning eyes that made Marcus's breath catch. This wasn't just a mindless beast. This was a thinking, reasoning creature that had been imprisoned for 3 centuries. The dragon studied him for a long moment, then spoke. Its voice was like grinding stone mixed with the rumble of an earthquake. Another morsel for the viewing pleasure of our captors, it said in perfect, if archaic, galactic standard. Tell me, small one, what crime brought you to my domain? The coordinated attack began with deadly precision. Dr. Martinez's first explosive charge detonated beneath the heavy weapons emplacement, sending guards and equipment flying in all directions. Simultaneously, Xyrix and his stealth team eliminated 4 key targets with silent efficiency, their weapons never making a sound. Commander Thax's assault team burst through the main entrance just as Valthera emerged from a different corridor, her recovered strength allowing her to breathe a controlled stream of plasma fire that melted through defensive barriers like they were made of paper. The Zephyrian guards, caught completely off guard by the multi-directional assault, struggled to respond effectively. Their communications were disrupted by Dr. Martinez's second explosive, which had destroyed their command relay, and the psychological impact of facing a dragon in close combat was devastating to their morale. Marcus and Dr. Martinez descended from their overwatch position, moving quickly across the battlefield toward the transport ship. Around them, the other freed prisoners fought with the desperation of beings who had nothing left to lose. Ship's biometric scanner, Dr. Martinez called out as they reached the transport. We still need Captain Dracus. Marcus looked back toward the facility entrance. In the chaos of battle, he had lost track of their Zephyrian prisoners. Dracus! He shouted into his communication unit. Where are you? Here, human, came the captain's voice, strained with fear. Warden Kelrick and I are pinned down in the main corridor. Guards are shooting at anything that moves. Stay put. We're coming for you. Valthera appeared beside them, her scales still glowing with residual heat from her plasma attacks. The guards are routing, but reinforcements will arrive momentarily. I can see their aircraft approaching. Marcus made a quick tactical decision. Dr. Martinez, get the ship powered up and ready for immediate departure. Use whatever technical skills you have to bypass anything that requires Dracus for now. Valthera, help me extract our Zephyrian friends. Understood, Dr. Martinez replied, already climbing aboard the transport. But Marcus, I can't actually fly this thing. The navigation systems are completely alien to me. One problem at a time. Marcus and Valthera fought their way back into the facility, moving through corridors now littered with disabled equipment and unconscious guards. They found Dracus and Kelrick huddled behind an overturned security desk, energy blasts flying over their heads. Time to go, Captain, Marcus announced, grabbing Dracus by the arm. I cannot be seen cooperating with escaped prisoners, Dracus protested. My career, my family's honor. Valthera's massive head appeared beside them, close enough that Dracus could see his own reflection in her eyes. Captain, your career will be the least of your concerns if you delay our departure any longer. They made their way back to the transport, now carrying two very reluctant Zephyrian officers. Dr. Martinez had indeed managed to get the ship's systems online, though she was clearly struggling with the alien interface. Good news and bad news, she reported as they climbed aboard. Good news, engines are running and life support is active. Bad news, I have no idea how to operate the navigation system, and those reinforcement ships will be here in about 3 minutes. Commander Thax and the last of the assault team were falling back to the ship, carrying 2 wounded prisoners. Xerix materialized from seemingly nowhere, his stealth mission complete. All prisoners accounted for, Thax reported. 17 freed, 15 ambulatory, 2 wounded but stable. Marcus looked around the ship's interior. It was designed to carry perhaps 10 beings comfortably, and they now had 19 plus 2 prisoners. More importantly, none of them except Dracus actually knew how to fly a Zephyrian transport. Captain, Marcus said, pressing the bone blade against Dracus's throat once again. Time for your cooperation to become genuine. Get us off this moon. I cannot. My duty to the Empire. Valthara squeezed into the ship's main compartment, her presence immediately making the space feel claustrophobic. Captain Dracus, allow me to present you with a simple choice. Help us escape and live to face whatever consequences await. Refuse, and I will personally ensure that you experience everything I learned about pain during my 3 centuries of captivity. The threat was delivered in a conversational tone that somehow made it infinitely more terrifying. Dracus's resistance crumbled completely. Yes, of course. Immediate departure. The captain moved to the pilot station and began the launch sequence with shaking hands. Through the ship's viewports, Marcus could see the incoming reinforcement aircraft growing larger against the storm-darkened sky. They're hailing us, Dr. Martinez reported from the communication station, demanding we return to the landing platform. Ignore them, Marcus ordered. How long until we can jump to hyperspace? Hyperspace calculations require 15 minutes minimum, Dracus replied. But those are patrol cruisers. They will intercept us long before. His words were cut off as the ship shuddered under weapons fire. The reinforcements had arrived and were not interested in negotiations. Evasive maneuvers, Marcus commanded. This is a prisoner transport, not a warship, Dracus protested even as he threw the ship into a sharp turn. We have minimal defensive capabilities. More weapons fire struck their shields, causing several consoles to spark and flicker. In the rear of the ship, the wounded prisoners were being tended to by others, while Valthara had somehow managed to coil herself into a space that should have been far too small for her massive form. Options? Marcus called out. The asteroid field, Xerix suggested, his voice calm despite the chaos around them. 17 kilometers distant. My people use similar fields to evade pursuit. Too far, Dr. Martinez said, studying sensor readings. They'll destroy us before we reach cover. Commander Thax studied the tactical display with professional interest. The moon's storm systems. Can we use the electromagnetic interference to mask our signature? Possible, Dracus admitted grudgingly. But flying through those storms is extremely dangerous. The electromagnetic fields can disrupt our engines. Another barrage of weapons fire struck their shields, and this time, warning alarms began blaring throughout the ship. They were running out of time and options. Valthara, Marcus said, struck by sudden inspiration. Can you generate another electromagnetic pulse? Yes, but as before it would drain my strength significantly. Could you target it specifically at the pursuing ships instead of broadcasting it in all directions? The dragon's eyes widened with understanding. A focused electromagnetic beam. Difficult but possible. It would require me to be partially outside the ship. The cargo bay has an atmospheric force field, Dr. Martinez said quickly. We could depressurize it temporarily. Do it, Marcus ordered. As Dr. Martinez worked frantically to reconfigure the cargo bay's life support systems, Valthara squeezed toward the rear of the ship. The pursuing cruisers were closing rapidly, their weapons charging for what would likely be a fatal barrage. Force field active, Dr. Martinez announced. Cargo bay depressurized. Valthara positioned herself at the edge of the force field, her massive form now exposed to the vacuum of space but protected by her natural ability to survive in hostile environments. Electrical energy began building around her scales once again. Target the lead cruiser first, Marcus instructed. On my mark, the pursuing ships moved into optimal range, their weapons preparing to fire. This was going to be a matter of seconds. Mark! Velthara roared into the vacuum of space, and a focused beam of electromagnetic energy lanced out toward the lead pursuit ship. The cruiser's systems died instantly, sending it tumbling helplessly through space as its engines failed. But the effort left Velthara severely weakened, and 2 more ships were still pursuing them. Jump calculations complete, Dracus announced with surprise in his voice. We can enter hyperspace now. Do it, Marcus ordered, then looked back at Velthara, who was barely conscious in the cargo bay. And someone help our dragon. The jump to hyperspace felt like salvation and terror combined into one moment. Reality stretched and twisted around their stolen transport ship as they plunged into the swirling tunnel of faster-than-light travel. Behind them, the remaining Zephyrian pursuit ships were left behind in normal space, unable to follow without knowing their destination coordinates. Marcus helped carry Velthara from the cargo bay to the main compartment. Though it took 6 of them working together to move her massive, unconscious form, the dragon's scales had dulled to an almost gray color, and her breathing was shallow but steady. She'll recover, Dr. Martinez said after conducting a basic examination. Her species seems remarkably resilient, but she needs rest and probably substantial nutrition. Speaking of which, Commander Thax rumbled, checking the ship's supply compartments. We have perhaps 3 days of food for this many beings. Less if our large friend requires proportional nutrition. Marcus looked around at their unlikely crew, 17 freed prisoners representing a dozen different species, plus 2 Zephyrian officers who were now effectively their prisoners. Some were wounded, all were exhausted, and none of them had anywhere safe to go. Dr. Martinez, he said, what's our current heading? She consulted the navigation display with Captain Dracus's reluctant assistance. We're traveling toward the Outer Rim territories. Current destination appears to be a trading station called Haven's Rest. Never heard of it. Independent system, Xerix spoke up from where he was tending to one of the wounded prisoners. Technically neutral territory. Pirates, smugglers, refugees. No questions asked if you have currency or useful skills. Sounds perfect. Marcus settled into one of the passenger seats, feeling exhaustion beginning to catch up with him. Captain Dracus, how long until we arrive? 18 hours at current speed, the reptilian officer replied sullenly. But I should warn you, the moment we dock at any civilized station, I will be required to report this incident to Zephyrian authorities. You'll do no such thing, Marcus said calmly. It is my duty. Your duty, Velthara interrupted, her voice weak but still carrying an undertone of menace, is to stay alive long enough to be useful. Consider your alternatives carefully, Captain. During the long journey to Haven's Rest, an interesting dynamic developed among the escaped prisoners. Despite representing multiple species with complex histories of conflict, they found common ground in their shared hatred of Zephyrian oppression. Dr. Martinez proved to be a natural coordinator, using her scientific background to help organize their limited resources efficiently. Commander Thax took charge of security protocols and established watch rotations. Xerix used his stealth abilities to monitor the ship's systems and ensure they weren't being tracked. But it was around Velthara that the most interesting conversations developed. As the dragon recovered her strength, she began sharing stories of the galaxy before Zephyrian expansion had dominated everything. Tales of free worlds, independent trade networks, and species that had governed themselves without interference. Your people, she said to Marcus during one of these conversations, are newcomers to galactic politics. Most species had centuries to establish their place before the Zephyrians arrived. Humans appeared just as the expansion was accelerating. Bad timing, Marcus replied. Perhaps, or perhaps perfect timing. You have not yet learned to accept oppression as inevitable. The dragon's words proved prophetic when they finally arrived at Haven's Rest. The trading station was exactly as Xerix had described. A sprawling collection of interconnected modules orbiting a gas giant, serving as a hub for the galaxy's outcasts and rebels. But more importantly, it was already home to a substantial human population. Terran colonial refugee ships, Dr. Martinez identified, pointing to several familiar designs docked at the station. Those are colony transport vessels. Military escorts, too. Marcus felt his heart race as he recognized some of the ship configurations. The Terran resistance had established a base here, hidden in plain sight among the station's chaotic mixture of species and factions. Captain Dracus, he said, making a decision that would change everything. You're going to help us dock normally and peacefully. You and Warden Kelrick will remain aboard this ship as our guests until we've established contact with the human authorities here. And then we're going to offer them something very valuable. A 300-year-old dragon who knows everything there is to know about Zephyrian military capabilities. 15 experienced fighters from a dozen different species, and 2 high-ranking Zephyrian officers who are going to provide us with current intelligence. The docking procedures went smoothly, though Marcus noticed several human security officers paying close attention to their arrival. Within an hour of securing their berth, they were approached by a delegation that included a familiar face. Colonel Morrison? Marcus said in disbelief, recognizing his former commanding officer from the Colonial Marines. Well, I'll be damned. Marcus Chen. We heard you were executed by the Zephyrians. The reports of my death were greatly exaggerated. Marcus gestured toward their ship. Colonel, I'd like you to meet some friends of mine. I think you're going to find them very interesting. The meeting that followed in Haven's Rest's main conference chamber was unlike anything the station had ever hosted. Valthera, now recovered enough to attend, dominated one end of the room with her massive presence. The freed prisoners sat around a circular table, while Colonel Morrison and several other human officers listened with growing amazement to their story. Let me understand this correctly, Morrison said finally. You broke out of the galaxy's most secure prison facility, freed 17 political prisoners, captured 2 Zephyrian officers, and convinced a dragon to join our cause. That's a fair summary, Marcus replied. And this dragon has detailed intelligence about every Zephyrian military installation in 3 sectors? Indeed I do, Valthera rumbled. 3 centuries of careful observation and analysis. Ships, weapons, personnel, supply lines, tactical doctrines, everything. Morrison looked around the table at the assembled group. Commander Thax and his people represented some of the galaxy's finest warriors. Cyrix and the other stealth specialists could provide intelligence-gathering capabilities the human resistance had never possessed. Dr. Martinez's terraforming expertise could help establish hidden bases on uninhabitable worlds. What are you proposing? Morrison asked. Marcus stood, feeling the weight of history settling on his shoulders. A real resistance, Colonel. Not just humans fighting for human colonies, but all the free species working together. The Zephyrians have enemies throughout the galaxy. It's time we started coordinating our efforts. A galactic rebellion, Dr. Martinez added, with shared intelligence, coordinated attacks, and mutual support. Valthera's eyes blazed with ancient fire as she spoke. The Zephyrians believe they have achieved inevitable dominance. They have grown complacent, overconfident. They do not expect their scattered enemies to unite. But united, we could actually win, Cyrix said quietly. The room fell silent as everyone contemplated the implications. What had started as a desperate prison break was becoming something much larger, a chance to change the balance of power in the galaxy itself. There's just one problem, Colonel Morrison said finally. The Zephyrians are going to be looking for you. All of you. When they realize what happened at Tartarus Prime, they'll mobilize everything they have. Marcus smiled, the same expression he had worn when facing the dragon for the first time. Let them come, Colonel. We'll be ready. Valthera's rumbling laugh filled the conference chamber. Indeed, it has been far too long since the hunters became the hunted. Outside the station's viewports, the stars waited, and somewhere among them, the Zephyrian Empire was about to discover that their galaxy was no longer theirs alone to rule. The rebellion had begun.